that I want to bring him on again where we could talk about some things we didn't get to talk about the last time he was on. My guest is Paul Tice, Tice, Paul Tice, and he has a bookstore. He's a publisher, but he also has a bookstore, being a publisher, and it's called the Booktree Publishing, the Booktree Bookstore. And when you're looking for it, and we'll give you all the information on how to find it on the web, remember it's the T-H-E before the word Booktree, thebooktree.com. And so I want to talk with him a little bit about theology and religion and some of the occult and hidden side of religion, because everyone knows I'm always talking about the occult world of religion, simply meaning the hidden world of religion, because that's all the word occult means, is hidden. And so much, as I've said before, so much religion is hidden. And so it's people like Paul that have done a magnificent job of bringing out all of the dark secrets in the religions that dominate the lives of humans on this earth. And I've always been amazed at how many human beings there are on the earth that have bought into, have bought into their different religious beliefs, and their fellow man buys into it. Before you know it, you got the whole city has bought into it, and then the state's bought into it. And my God, eventually the whole country has bought into the religion. And everybody assumes it's all true, but nobody knows what they're doing. Nobody's ever checked anything. And this is true in probably all the different religions of the world. There are some philosophies which appear to be religion, but actually they're more philosophies and seeking after truth. And we want to talk about one of them tonight. So anyway, I want to introduce to you my dear friend Paul Tice. Hopefully Paul is with us. Are you here, Paul?
I surely am, Jordan. Thank you so much for having me on again.
It's quite all right. I got a lot of good response the last time you were on, and I hope the same this time. Paul and I met many years ago in a bookstore in Pasadena. He and a mutual friend of ours, the two of them came in. I was there by myself. They came into the store and came right to the section of the bookstore that I was interested in, which was UFOs and the Illuminati and that kind of thing, and they were heavily into that too. So we started talking and ended up going out for dinner together, and ever since then been very close friends. And Paul is now, as I said, the owner of the Booktree bookstore in San Diego. So if you're in San Diego, there's a magnificent bookstore of all kinds of esoteric and strange religions and occult materials that Paul has gathered from old books that are found in bookstores and old libraries, and then reproduce those books. So that a lot and most of everything he has in his bookstore are all reprints of very old, out-of-date books on religion, the occult world, secret societies, all kinds of interesting, that kind of literature. And a lot of the movies and television shows on the secret societies and Illuminati, etc., has come from Paul's bookstore. So if you're living in San Diego, if you're ever in San Diego, remember, look up Paul at thebooktree.com. Anyway, Paul, I wanted to talk with you tonight about Gnosticism, because so much today of the world is covered with religion. And in religion, there's a word that is used for people who involve themselves in churches and synagogues and mosques. The word for all people and going to houses of worship are referred to, generally speaking, as believers. I remember going to Christian churches when I was a kid, and people would ask me, oh, you're a believer, are you? And how long have you been a believer? The word is believer. And it always struck me as strange why Christians and others are called believers. Because when they go to their churches or synagogues, they're referred to as believers. And I don't like that word in relation to religion. I don't want to believe anything. I'd like to know the truth. If there is such a thing, I'd like to know the real story. I don't want to believe. And I get that idea from the government we live under. The U.S. is not interested in believing anything. The U.S. has FBI, CIA, NSA, and God knows about 50 more secret societies and secret organizations in the government for one purpose only, not to believe what's going on, but to damn well know what's going on. And so they don't care to believe you're all right. They got to find out, tapping your lines and doing all the research on you. So they don't want to believe. They want to know. Well, the same thing with me. I don't want to believe anything. I want to know for sure. Well, the only way you're going to know is to take the time, and if you don't do it, you're not ever going to get to anywhere. Take the time to read and study and go back into the ancient world and read where all of these ideas and belief systems have come from, who started these different beliefs in different churches and religions. That's the kind of information that Paul has at the bookstore in San Diego. It is filled with brilliant and beautiful, incredibly important books on the origins of belief systems of this world. And my goodness, there's all kinds of stuff on UFOs and aliens and churches and cults in the Middle East and ancient history. Just an incredible array of wisdom and knowledge. So I just wanted everyone to know that this is a very important bookstore in San Diego, The Book Tree. So Paul, in relation to the subject Gnosticism, Gnostic simply means in Greek, if I'm not mistaken, simply means to know something, which is a little different than Christianity is to believe something. And I know that you, Paul, have been studying Gnosticism for many, many years. I haven't. I'm just aware of the general idea. Maybe you could tell the people some of the interesting background of the Gnostic belief, the Gnostic system of theology and philosophy. Gnosticism, what is it?
Well, there's two different levels in any religious belief system, and any religion will have these two levels, which is, first and foremost, those who are believers, as you mentioned before. And then there's a very deeper level, a very deep spiritual level, and it kind of reflects the very essence of yourself or your soul. And a lot of people are, they turn very fundamentalist because they've had these beliefs pounded into their mindset for years and years and years, and they really believe strongly in what they what they've been told. And so at the same time, at some point you have the ability to break through the simply believing certain things and experience something. For instance, a Gnostic believes that instead of being told what to believe, you can experience God for yourself because you have that connection to God within you. So, but if you approach a person who hasn't had these kind of breakthroughs yet, then they will simply tell you, don't bother me with facts, I've got my beliefs. The fact of the matter is that you have a deeper part of you that goes beyond simply, repeating things, that you've been told. So, one of the big secrets about Gnosticism is that what we've had is that Gnosticism, the birth of it, actually came about around the time of Jesus. There's certain facets of it that actually existed before the time of Jesus because there was always that ability within us to know these things on a deep spiritual level. But, I think the greatest value of Jesus' teachings was that he claimed to know God directly and that we could do the same. I mean, the greatest ally Jesus had was Gnosis. It was not the church. There was no church when Jesus was alive. But there was a Gnosis, or a knowing, which he had and he shared through parables and different forms of teaching. So basically, they tell you, oh, Gnosticism, it's, they were heretics, stay away from them. Well, Jesus was the first Gnostic there ever was. So, it's, how do you, and that's the big secret that they don't want you to know. Jesus was the father of all this stuff. So,
and the Apostle Paul was, he wrote close to one half of the New Testament are the writings of the Apostle Paul. And Paul was a Gnostic. He was not a Christian in the truest sense of the word. Mm-hmm. He never knew anything, especially didn't know the person Jesus, if there was a person named Jesus, but he didn't know any person named Jesus personally. And all of his terms that the Apostle Paul put into his writings in the New Testament, all of them come directly out of the Gnostic tradition. And so it was as if the Apostle Paul, or the one called Saul of Tarsus, was just telling you, and he even said that a couple of times in the scriptures. I remember one scripture where the Apostle Paul said, whether it is God or the angels or the Great Spirit speaking through me, or maybe it's just me, I don't know. But here's what I believe. There is a perfect example of Gnosticism, where the Apostle Paul is saying, I don't know if it's God speaking through me or if it's a great spirit that's inspiring me. I don't know what it is, but here's what I'm telling you. Well, that's Gnosticism. And so it's basically the difference between believing something or knowing it in your gut that you're right, knowing something. You don't have to be explained to and shown how to understand it. Your gut tells you, I know. I don't need to have somebody tell me something is true. So just knowing, well, in Greek is called Gnosticism, to know something. And the only way I get to know anything is by studying all the great authors and all the great people of the ancient world and what they wrote and what their beliefs were. And after a while, you get to where you've got a fairly good idea about what's going on. You may not know all the details, but I think I have a fairly good understanding now of the Gnostic tradition as opposed to the Christian, Judeo, and Jewish and the Islamic beliefs, because these are all what we call belief systems.
Yeah,
they don't know, they just believe.
Yeah, and so, Jesus had said well, we could be like him, and the church actually doesn't want you to be like him because they are the intermediary. And if everybody can be like Jesus, you got a bunch of people who are able to experience God directly. Well, what do you need the church for? Their job is out the window. So, the great thing about this is that, we have sort of like a divine power, or a divine spark. The Gnostics believed that we are, in fact, beings of light, and that we have come from another place into this world. And there's a parable that they teach. It's called the Hymn of the Pearl, or also known as the Hymn of the Robe of Glory. And it's basically a reflection of us coming into the world, but it talks about how this young man is sent on a mission, and he's going to the land of Egypt, and he's going to come down, and his mission is to find a pearl that is guarded by a dragon and to bring it back home. But once he gets down into the land of Egypt, which is actually this earth, he forgets what he's there for. And we're all running around not knowing, in large part why we're here, who we are. And so in this parable, he's down there, and after a time, an eagle comes down and reminds him of what he's there for. And he wakes up, And, those who are enlightened as beings of light, they do wake up. And that's what happens when you wake up and you become enlightened. You realize, wait a minute, I'm not from here. And so, you do so after that, you're aware of the work that you have to do. We're spiritual beings. We're here to do some spiritual things. We're here to learn who we are. We're here to help spread, kindness and other things like that. And so, he wakes up, and actually by doing this kind of spiritual work, instead of just accepting the Savior into your heart, you actually do some work in the way that Jesus would have done, or some other divine person, and then you're able to go back to your the place where you are, and when you arrive there, the robe of glory is now bequested upon you, and it is said that you have a twin in this other world, which has grown with your growth in this world, which is one of the reasons why you come down, because we're down here on this earth, which is a very low material vibration compared to the spirit world. And so we have the opposites here, light and dark, night and day. We've got good and evil. We can work with this stuff down here. And as we do, we are able to progress. And then there's another part of us in this other world that is watching us, and people say that we have guardian angels or we have a higher self. Well, yes, we do. That's because we're here working, in part for our higher growth. And once we go back there, and we able to go back into this other realm, then it all makes sense why we've come down here, what we're here for, and all that stuff. Now, this is something that the Gnostics teach. Not something you'll find in the church. The Gnostics were actually the mystics of the early Christian church. And the church wanted to be the mouthpiece for that. And they didn't want you to be experiencing this growth for yourself, because they were the intermediary. They wanted control of you, and they needed you to fight their wars for them or do whatever, and collect your taxes, whatever they needed from you at the time. But from your own personal, deep spiritual point of view and growth, we're here for a reason. And the Gnostics were able to beautifully talk about these things, and some of the older Gnostic texts have since been rediscovered. We're starting now, centuries later, to figure all this out. And so I think we've outgrown some of our religions, whereby, the God of the Bible is a very despotic and mean character, whereby the Gnostics believed in the divine feminine. And the divine feminine gave balance to the entire spiritual outlook of things. And without the divine feminine, you've got a mean and nasty God instead. I mean, we became a mean and nasty culture and a mean and nasty world. And the Gnostics can provide balance. And as we learn about how to treat others and include everyone, we're also growing in that spiritual way. So once we go back to this other realm, because we all end up back there, then we've accomplished something. So that's kind of what the whole Gnostic thing is in a nutshell.
Yeah, and I can see why the churches would not want you reading this kind of what we could call free thought literature. In other words, just read educational documentary, go to encyclopedias and reference works and read about the world you live in, and and if you can, go to different countries and see how the people live, and understand a very important part of your religious life. It depends on where you were born. I mean, if you happen to have been born in Africa, you would have an African outlook on theology and religion of the culture you were born into. If you happen by chance to have been born in China, then you would have an Oriental or Chinese view of spiritual questions and concepts and ideas. Unless you were born in America, in Canada, and you would have, your viewpoint. So this is why people don't realize where you were born has a lot to do with who you are and what you believe. It doesn't mean you're right, because if you're the one that has the real truth, then that means the rest of the earth is wrong, and you are right. And then when you look at your life and the decisions you make, and if you're the only one on the earth who is right, then we're in trouble, because humans are continually making mistakes. So the bottom line is, nobody's right if everybody else is wrong. And so that's the last thing I remember in relation to this subject. I found that I thought it was interesting, is to explain the difference between theology and mythology. Theology goes back to the Greek word theo, or T-H-E-O, or T-H-E-O, is theo, which is God in Greek. And so the study is ology. And so the study of God, or the subject of God, is called theology. While there is another school of thought called mythology. And I have always said that the difference between theology and mythology is really very simple. It's whatever it is that you, wherever you were born and whatever particular religion or belief system you have, that you can call theology. That's the study of God. And since you are the world's foremost intellectual, brilliant mind, whatever it is that you personally believe to be true has to be the real truth. So therefore, anything you teach or anything you believe in our teaching is called theology, or the worship of God, while your neighbor who lives down the street and works with you, he has a different belief system, so therefore his belief system is what you call mythology. It's a story. The word myth simply means a story. Mm-hmm. And so he's got a story that he believes, and obviously it's just a story. It has no basis in fact whatsoever, no matter who he is, no matter what race, creed, or color, no matter what he believes. It's a mythology. It's all nonsense. Why? Because you've got the truth. You have the real truth. Mm-hmm. So you got the theology, and he has a mythology. That's how you tell the difference. You have the whole truth, and everybody else in the world can go to hell, because nobody knows anything except you. And so, this is why today we have the frustration and the anger and the bitterness and all of the lower ideas of mankind, religion, philosophy, occultism, because it seems as though the whole entire earth is caught up in the same problem, that no matter where you are born and accepting into your life that culture and that belief system, then you grow up and find out other people don't believe that way at all. And before you know it, there's an argument, and that argument leads to fighting, and that fighting leads to war. And so that's why the world is in the shape it's in today, because people believe things, but very few people are studious enough to know. Go back to an encyclopedia or reference work and do some homework and find out where things come from, what the words mean. Now you are a Gnostic, one who knows, as opposed to being someone who believes. So that's this is what I wanted people to understand. And there's a lot more we could talk about in relation to Gnosticism. You, Paul, have been looking at the subject for far more years than I have. What were some of the experiences you've had with other great Gnostics? And I know I've had some experiences with them, but some of the things you've learned from great Gnostic teachers.
Well, I for a number of years back in the 90s, I would go to Stefan Heller's Ecclesia Gnostica Church in Los Angeles. And I believe that Dr. Heller was the first to open a Gnostic church in North America. And I would go and listen to him speak every Friday night, and for a number of years, and it's very inspiring. And the reason why I would go to him is because it gave me an understanding for the things that I've experienced myself. I went through back in the early 1980s, kind of like a born-again phase, but then I experienced an amazing out-of-body type journey into another realm, and I was shown things, and I just had this, and it was a direct experience of some godly energy, and it was the most incredible, life-changing thing that had ever happened to me. So I went and approached some churches and some people who, I thought could give me some answers as to what is going on here, because this was, just the most life-changing thing that had ever happened to me. And I had gotten either dead silence or, well, you're going to have to join our church first before I can explain anything to you about that, and so, and then others, it just seemed like they were afraid to even talk about it, or they just didn't know. So I realized at that point that, I had a direct experience, and I didn't know that you called it Gnosticism at the time. I didn't know what it was called, but I just knew that this is powerful stuff. So it was only a few years later, a couple years later, that I moved to California, because this happened in Massachusetts. And I moved to California, and I discovered that there was a church that, it talked about direct experiences, and this, everything made sense to me now through the work and explanations of Dr. Heller, Dr. Stefan Heller, and it's Hoeller. He's written some great books on the subject as far as the whole history of it and an understanding of it, and he's written a really good overview of Gnosticism in general, and so he's one of them. And then that inspired me that I actually have since written a workbook called Life's Biggest Questions Workbook, where you can put in answers to all of these direct experiences that you've had and what life means to you, so it's all written down in one place. I first started writing this thing as a way for me to share all of these incredible experiences that I've had in my life, and then I suddenly realized, wait a minute, what's more important than the person themselves that's reading this? So I made it into a workbook, and my answers are still in the back of the book. But this is a workbook for people that want to really understand and put together, and maybe almost in like a journal form, but answer these questions about what life really means. And it's a way for you to figure stuff out, but also to bring stuff out. And so that's something that you can learn from yourself, is my point. You can go and you can listen to these other teachers and things, and you can be inspired. But when you have when there's a way for you to learn from your deeper self, I mean, there's nothing more powerful than that. And I had it happen to me from some other realm that I went to, and then also, learning how to share that and try to understand it and to help others do the same.
Well, I went to Dr. Heller's church also, and I was amazed at how much I didn't know when I first went there. Because if you've never been to Dr. Heller's church, what was it called again? Ecclesia
Gnostica.
And he's on the web. And you could go to the videos on the web and put up his name and listen to his lectures, and you will see what I'm talking about. Because when you go there, it's a very spiritual presence there. It's a very respectful, quiet, and honorable presence there of people pursuing spiritual wisdom. But what I loved about the church was that all he was doing, all the times I ever went, he would merely explain where things come from. Mm-hmm. And this has been the big thing with me all my life, saying the same thing. I'm always fascinated to see where things come from. Dr. Heller and other Gnostics will do that. That's what the Gnostic Church was all about. You go and listen to a lecture, and he would explain from one week to the next some particular belief system that's in the world, where it started, who started it, how it got started, why people believed it, what did it happen, what did it do for the people who accepted it, and how did it operate in the world of mankind. And so you come away with a brilliant lecture on a particular religion or a particular subject or philosophy. That was the basic idea of the Gnostic Church, is just go to hear a wonderful and brilliant man explaining where things come from. And he would explain Catholicism and the Bible and the biblical ideas and belief systems coming out of Christianity and Judaism and Islam, and where they came from and what they meant and why people believed it and who first presented this particular idea. And my goodness, not a religious experience as much as it is an educational experience. I mean, you're coming and listening to someone who dissects the spiritualism of the world that you live in, where things have come from. So that's why I consider Gnosticism to be so important, because it's not a religion as such. It is an explanation of all of the different belief systems in the world and how they connect, what they believe, and showing where they go, on what foundation they were based on, who the people were that came up with these ideas, and that is the most important thing about Gnosticism, is the education one gets, not just the wonderful spirituality and feeling you have at the Gnostic Church, but an education that is priceless. So that's why I wanted to talk with you tonight about Gnosticism, because your bookstore, I know, because you and I, a long time ago, got the idea that you should have a bookstore. and I had already been doing it before I met you. We did it together a lot, and that is to go to old bookstores and old university bookstores and get all kinds of old literature back in the 1700s, 1800s, especially but in the 18th and 19th century, books on the occult world, on metaphysics, on spirituality, different cults, different belief systems. And these were all pricelessly, incredibly interesting books. But nobody seemed to know about them. It's all being missed today by young people who are asking questions. All the answers are right there. All you need to do is go to an old library that collects all the old ancient literature and all the ancient books and reference books. And so it was decided, you and I decided that what you needed to do was open up a bookstore whereby you could reproduce all of these old ancient books into modern day books and distribute them to all the people who are interested in spirituality, religion, the occult world, metaphysics, all of the alternative ideas and belief systems of the world. And your bookstore is filled with those kinds of brilliant educational documentary books and videos, and so I'm fascinated when I go to your bookstore and how much there is to know. I mean, when you think you know something about ancient religion, then you go to a bookstore where it is crammed filled with all kinds of books that have been lost forever, except that you republished them. And so that's why I think your bookstore needs to really be known well. It's called The Book Tree in San Diego. And its owner is my guest today, Paul Tice, T-I-C-E. Paul, tell people where they can contact the bookstore and come see you and take advantage of all of that incredible material you have sitting there for people who want knowledge. Yeah, because, even a lot of these bookstores are no longer around anymore. Even people from Los Angeles come down here because this is, the Bodhi tree in Los Angeles closed a while back, and there's not really that many of us left doing this kind of thing. So we do mail order all over the world, actually. So first off,
if you're not in the Southern California area, just call our 800 number, and it's our policy to send a free catalog to anybody in the world that asks for it. It's a physical paper catalog. I believe if you go to our website, www.thebooktree.com, you can download the catalog from there. We do have an update sheet, though, that's got our newest offerings in there as well. So, we carry all of the things that we've done and reproduced, and we carry the best of what we can find from all other sources. And so our 800 number is 1-800-700-TREE, T-R-E-E, or 1-800-700-8733. You can call that 24 hours. Just say, hey, I want your catalog. Give us your address. We'll zip one right on out to you. And then, thebooktree.com, it shows that all of our titles on there. We're having a little trouble with the website lately. If anybody knows WordPress and can give us a hand, give us a call too, because we could use help. But
me too. But and remember, when you go on the web to Paul's bookstore, it's the THE Booktree, thebooktree.com. Very important, because if you just go for Booktree, I don't know where it will go. But if you want Paul in San Diego, the THE Booktree.com. And go there and just peruse through all of the tons of books and subjects that his books cover. You'll see what I mean.
Yeah, our physical address is we're at 3316 Adams Avenue in San Diego, and 92116, and we are here.
The address again was what?
3316 Adams Avenue in San Diego.
I thought it was 3316.
Yeah, 3316 Adams Avenue.
Oh, okay. It's 3316 Adams Avenue.
Yeah.
92116.
Yeah, and we are here noon to 7, Tuesday through Saturday. So if you're ever in the area, swing by. We've got lots of stuff here that, and it's always changing. We have a used book area. People with this kind of stuff come in and they do trade for store credit, and a lot of times we'll get, libraries from people, and it's always changing. So you never know what you're going to find here. That's one of the great things about a bookstore, is that you never know what you're going to find. So.
And your bookstore is not like any other bookstore. That's important for people to understand. It's not like your normal, regular, classy little bookstores that you find everywhere, in the big malls. No, this is a specific kind of bookstore, and the owner is there on the property. His name is Paul Tice, and the bookstore is not your normal bookstore that you go in. This is a researcher's library of all the ancient documents, ancient books that have been out of print from many, many years, if not 100 years, that Paul has found in old abandoned bookstores and bookshelves, and then reproduce those books with new covers. And now the people who are interested, sincerely interested in spiritual knowledge and understanding in the ancient world, now they have a place to go to where all of this stuff has been reproduced into new books. And like you said, and even the best of the best that is out there today, he carries that also. So it's a gold mine. It's a real gold mine.
We're just hoping for, the stuff that I've reproduced is only probably about 2% of my entire personal library, and we would hope to someday make the full library, which is basically in storage. We want to make that library available to serious researchers someday, but we don't have funding, we don't have the space, any of that stuff. So we're hoping to create a center similar to PRS, Philosophical Research, where speakers can come in and speak, and we've got a library and a bookstore and have it all, in one location.
Yeah, that would be a wonderful, if we found someone who had the funds, who really wanted to do something of legitimate, real value for the human family. And today, there's so much ignorance, ill-informed, unread ignorance that is dominating our planet.
Yeah.
And so many people today are angry, They are frustrated. They are, the streets of America and the world are filled with angry people who know there's something wrong. They know that their church is not telling them the truth. They know the religions are all false, but they don't know where to turn. They don't know where to go to get the real truth. Well, the real truth, like the Bible says in the Old Testament, I think it's in the book of Jeremiah, it says, God says, go back to the old way. Don't buy into all the newfangled religions and stuff. Go back to the old way. Go back to the ancient world and read what the great philosophers and mathematicians and the great minds of the world, what they would say. Go back and educate yourself as to where you come from and what religion is and what theology is and who is God and where did you come from. All of this has been covered for thousands of years, except today. And the United States especially does not want you knowing any of this. So that's why they give you so much entertainment. They give you nothing but theme parks and entertainment, and music, drugs, alcohol, anything you want except wisdom and knowledge. That's what they don't want you having. And so they want to dumb the people down and give them comic books and nonsense and waste your time with 46 different kind of ball games, from basketball to football and
reality
tennis
TV.
People. It's the whole world's a ball game. Just go out and go play ball. We don't need you reading all of those ancient books that are blowing the whistle on who we are and tell you where we're coming from. You don't need to do that.
Yeah, here's something to really consider. Those who are listening, you need to ask yourself something, and because we're being dragged down into the mire of the materialism to such a degree that, when you turn on a radio show like this and you start suddenly getting bits of truth, it's time to sit down and ask yourself one thing. Do I want to be entertained, or do I want to be informed and educated? Because everything out there is trying to entertain you. And
that's true.
And that's all many people care about is, what they can watch on TV and what can titillate them and make them, give them some things to talk about that are basically means nothing. When you sit down and watch TV like some reality show or something like that, ask yourself, what impact does this have on my life? And then, maybe going into a store like this or online and seeing the richness of something there that can advance your
mind,
your spirit, everything, and maybe improve your body, just all kinds of things that can really help on a deep level that really relates directly to you and your essence and who you really are. That's why you're here. It's not to be entertained. And so a lot of times, you have a choice to make every day. Do I want to be entertained or do I want to be educated? And
you're right.
For every day that goes by that you don't try to grow in some spiritual way or educate yourself, then you're just kind of like spinning your wheels, like what impact do the Kardashians have on your life directly?
You're
it's
right.
like
That's true.
We are being so sidetracked. And it's just a shame that our culture is starting to suffer because individuals like those who are listening are suffering. And when you put that into a big collective pot, we're just we're being dumbed down. And
that's why I've said that America is one of the biggest markets for narcotics, for the cartels in Central and South America, the drug cartels, the alcohol that is sold in America. We've got to have a liquor store on every corner, and you have to have every possible kind of liquor and beer and anything else you can in a liquor store, and you've got to have one on every corner. Why? Because the government wants people to consume alcohol, drugs. And why? Simple, because this way you stay out of the way. You don't get in the way with thinking too much. You don't start asking questions that are uncomfortable. You don't start causing other people to think. So it's a hive mentality. Just go out and have a beer and drink your drink and watch basketball and go to hell. Just stay out of the way and don't ask any questions.
Yeah. Here's the thing. I don't care if I do it with my library or if somebody else can do it, but I would love to one day see a kind of a center where the very best minds in the world can come together and share their research or do research and broadcast their talks online and have just a place where you can share ideas amongst yourselves privately as researchers or with an audience who can come in and sit down and watch you. And then you've got a library to research and you've got a bookstore to buy some things. And I mean, if there were centers like this around the world that, other people, other than me, I don't care if it's me or not, I just would love to see centers like this spring up so that we've got a world where people are waking up. We really need to wake up. I mean, we're just...
Oh, God, yes. Oh, yeah, no doubt about it. The world, as I said, people are angry. The streets are filled with angry men. People are angry and frustrated and ready to fight. Why? Because they see injustice and stupidity and injustice and stupidity until the point where they are now angry. And the only way out of it is to take some drugs or drink and go in and watch some endless movies, entertain yourself and make sure you have plenty of liquor. Why? Because there's nothing else of any intrinsic human value on the earth. There's nothing out there. There's nothing out there that satisfy the human desire for knowledge and wisdom and understanding. There's just a vast wasteland of stupidity, ignorance, alcohol, drugs, and gangs and the rest of it.
Yeah, in general, as humankind, we still don't know who we are and why we're here. And we basically, as far as consciousness is concerned, we're still living in darkness. And,
no doubt about that, boy.
And so years later, we may look back on these times and be amazed at how, in what ignorance that we had been living in. But between then and now, we do need to actually wake up and do some things that can move us forward as human beings. And there's very little of that.
Well, and the governments have inculcated the idea that you are nothing more than a number on a computer. You don't offer any value of anything. You are nothing more than just a computer blip on some computer in government. They don't care who you are, your family, what your hopes and dreams for the future. They're about your family and your children. They don't give a damn about that.
Yeah, just pay your taxes, keep your mouth shut, and fight our wars and
That's it. Just go out and fight our wars and drink your beer and go to the entertainment and go to the movies and do whatever you're going to do and stay out of our way.
But you know something? You're here for a reason. You have a purpose, and you've come down here for a reason. It's your soul that brought you here. You're not here as just some materialistic person that happens to have a brain. I mean, we're actually spiritual beings that have a body, and we're here in a short period of time to work and make some progress for ourselves. And if we live our lives in darkness and we do the biddings for other people for their own agendas, we're not doing anything for ourselves. But we really
you got that right. And also, I would throw in too. I would make this point that the confusion. The chaos and confusion in philosophies and in religions where people argue on the streets about religions, and then there's fights and then of course it gets organized, and now we call them wars. Mm-hmm. And we have major wars where there's actual bloodshed because of the religious differences, etc. All of this that we are experiencing on the earth today, with all of the wars and violence and alcoholism and drug addiction, etc. I trace it all back to the departing of the human mind from wisdom and knowledge to what is referred to today as cultural Marxism. Mm-hmm. It is the Marxist-Leninist Soviet communist philosophy that you only live to honor and to provide for the government. That's what you're here for. You were born to serve the government. The government is run by a handful of gangsters and criminals, and they own you, and you work for them.
Now, throughout history, though, there have been those from time to time who've suddenly surfaced and stood up against the powers that be and actually changed things. And they didn't do it with money or great armies or anything. They just had they just had a power within themselves and a gift from God to speak out and actually create change. There's been people throughout history. And actually in the first book that I wrote in 1999, Triumph of the Human Spirit, it's a historical map of all the different people who actually changed the world with nothing but the power within themselves. And
we all as a matter of fact, that's the way the world has always been. It waits. The whole human race waits on the Nikola Tesla, the Albert Einstein, the Royal Rife. The once in a while, a great mind will come along and challenge the status quo. And then people begin to wake up and find, oh my God, I didn't know this. I didn't know that. No one ever told me about this or that. And now you start waking up and finding out how much you've been lied to, tricked and deceived. And why? Because the people who run the planet look at you as just a computer blip on a computer somewhere. They don't care about your humanity, your family, your grandmother, or your mother, your family. None of it is of any importance to the people who govern your country. Period. None of it. It's money, it's power, it's political power, and that's the only thing. And so that's why the Marxist, what I call the Marxist philosophy that dominates the world today. Marxism basically said, you are unimportant. You are totally unimportant as a human being. You could be dead, and who cares? Because there's going to be other billions just like you. And they're all useless eaters, and you are a useless eater, and all of you are useless, nothing but slaves. And that's the Marxist-Leninist philosophy. So get out of this life the best you can. Well, that gives birth to alcoholism and drug addiction and wars and violence. And so that's why we are who we are, because we don't have any power, because we don't read. We don't have the knowledge. Again, we're going to go. I've been happy to talk with Paul Tice. Go to the Booktree, thebooktree.com on the web, and get the information. And if you're in San Diego, 3316 Adams Avenue, San Diego. Thank you, Paul, for being with us.
Thanks for having me again. Enjoyed it.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye.
No rules, no rules, no taboo topics, no taboo topics, no fear of doom, no fear of doom. We are American Freedom Radio, American Freedom Radio.